IVM.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into A Show About Crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Famous was built on very, very strong foundations and principles. Being a family-run business, we very gradually introduced things. We didn't jump into things like, oh, there are 10 opportunities, let's invest in all 10 right now. I've always believed in this philosophy that if you're able to figure out why you exist and why have you existed for 75 years, then, if you're doing the right thing, money will follow at some point. It might not happen now. It might happen after 5 years, after 10 years. But you need to do what you're doing very religiously and with a lot of sincerity.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast. My guest today is a keeper of history, cinematic history to be more precise. Anant Rungta is the third generation entrepreneur who leads this enterprise called Famous Studios, a studio that was set up in pre-independence India in the 1940s. In 1946, they famously became the first air-conditioned studio in all of India. Many studios which were contemporaries to Famous like RK, Mehboob and many others in the south have probably shut down in parts or in full over the years. But Famous continues to thrive. The studio that made Sita or Geeta in the early 70s just launched its first OTT production on Disney Hotstar a few weeks back. Anant attributes this longevity to the studio's investments in technology, whether it was setting up the first post-production space, the first telecine in India in the 80s, or creating the first TVC to use motion capture a few years back, or creating a co-working space for creators in 2019, Famous has been uniquely successful as a case study in evolution and change management. I wanted to talk to Anant about the DNA that makes all of this happen and where it comes from, and why he, an entrepreneur himself, who created a sports tourism business called Fanatic many years back, quit that at its peak and came home to Famous Studios. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Filter Coffee Podcast. Security on a computer is like a layered cake. No matter how secure each layer may be, attackers and hackers will work tirelessly to find a vulnerability and exploit it. These cyber attacks can sneak into a system unnoticed, eventually gaining access to all the programs and files on your computer stack. Luckily, with Intel vPro platform, all of this is avoidable. Intel vPro has the Intel Hardware Shield, which adds protection to every layer of the computer system with 3 groups of security capabilities. Advanced Threat Protection. This helps quickly detect and remediate the latest ransomware and crypto mining attacks on the system. Below the OS Security, which helps identify unauthorized changes to hardware and firmware. And lastly, Application and Data Protection, which helps prevent memory corruption and malware injection. So, secure your organization's productivity with hardware-based security only with the Intel vPro. Visit www.intel.in/IT Heroes to know more. Intel vPro, built for business. Welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast, Anand. How has the last couple of years been for you?
Well, I think it's been bittersweet. We've learned so much, but I think somewhere in life, everyone expects to receive such challenges. And I think the challenges have actually helped us overcome and grow out of it. And I think we are in a pretty good space right now. yes, the first 2 or 3 months of the pandemic were difficult as it was for everyone, not just us. But where there is a will, there is a way, as we always say. And we have found a way out. And, we're in a pretty good space right now, at least where work is concerned. I think we have been able to use that time to learn, to change our ways of working, adapt to new ways of working, and most importantly, retain all our clients as well as retain all our team members. And very happy to say that in the last 3 or 4 months, we've actually added to about 10-15% workforce than what we had before the pandemic as well.
Wow.
So, yes, so we have really tried to keep the company, clients, and employees first. And I think with that in mind, with that focus, we've stayed afloat. And we're all hoping that now there's no third wave, or if there is any other wave, it's not as bad as what it was earlier this year. So fingers crossed. Yeah,
that's a phenomenal data point, right? For a business like yours, which is fundamentally an in-person business, right? Very few of the things that actually happen in famous studios can actually happen remotely. So for you to be able to do what you just mentioned, which is retain most of your employees, sustain the business, you must feel pretty good about how you handle this.
Yeah, it's not just about how we handled it. We always had this objective that we wanted to retain everybody because everyone has been adding value. Most of these guys who are still with us have been with us for 5+ years. Some have been with us for 26 years. The thing is, the biggest learning actually came from my team members. Usually in our industry, you always realize that if you give one person a certain job, they will only want to do that job. There are very few people who step out of their comfort zone and say, okay, look, we realize there is a problem out there and we don't mind stepping in or filling our team member's shoe to get the work done. And that's something that I realized most of my team members, they stepped up to the plate and they actually came and said that, Anant, we realize that financially you guys are going to go through some kind of trouble and we will help out and we will try and do a lot more than what our existing job roles are. So that is something that was very inspiring, for me. Samne se, there's someone coming and telling me that, look, Anant, I'll take care of this. You don't stress. We understand that you're already under a lot of stress. So that was something, that whole human side of our team members sprung up, Also, unfortunately, one of these interns that were working with us, he came on board and he said that, I would like to learn color grading. So he comes in and really works hard. He refused to take 1 penny salary also from us. We said, look, you're here. At least let us offer you something simple, at least where you can use it for your traveling expenses, food, whatever. He refused. He got detected with COVID and he passed away within a week. So that was one of the unfortunate things that happened. But the entire team that worked with him rallied behind that incident, and they managed to raise a sizable amount of money from all our colleagues to give it to his wife and his 2-year-old daughter who are still there. They don't live in Bombay, they live somewhere else in the country. So the whole human angle, people getting together, team members forgetting about their past quarrels, politics, all of that was just washed away, So it's not just the management, it's not just me and my father or the family that is in the business. It's team members are equally responsible for standing up and really taking this entire situation head on, which made it a lot easier for me to focus on how I would like to reopen the business when we were fully going to start again. And, kudos to my entire team for really helping out in this entire situation.
What a touching story. I think we've all been, at least in the second wave, just 1 degree away from a story like this, right? Whether it is friends or families or colleagues. I'm so happy you and your organization have been able to support this individual's family after a tragedy like that. Moving on, Anant, I grew up in Chennai, not far from the hub of movie production in that city. And for years, I've driven past many studio buildings, multi-storied studio buildings during my bus rides to school. Large, imposing, but empty buildings on which creepers grew. I'm sure all of them had, their time in limelight. A lot of cinematic history were made within those walls, but they've not been able to survive the test of time, right? But Famous has been different. For a studio that started in pre-independence India, you're not just surviving in 2021, you're actually thriving. What did Famous do differently?
I think Famous was built on very, very strong foundations and principles. Secondly, being a family run business, the way a family run business is normally operated is very different from a business where you're, in a corporate style where you are a lot more aggressive in your expansion. So when my grandfather was building the studio, at that time, the industry had not really kicked off. It was there, but there was also lack of infrastructure. So 1947, when we officially opened, or 1946 it was, sorry, when we officially opened, we were offering Asia's first air-conditioned studio. Now, at that time, it was a big deal because you were seeing all these yesteryear movies, and the actors went crazy. They were like, "Yeah, we get to go to a studio where there's an air conditioner. Wow, spend the entire day there, shoot 4 hours, spend 10 hours and come back." Slowly, we started identifying what was the gap in the market. And we very gradually introduced things. We didn't jump into things like, oh, there are 10 opportunities, let's invest in all 10 right now. So that gradual expansion is another reason why, we were always able to manage our money, manage the company finances, and ensuring that we're not over leveraged at any particular point of time. And even till date, my father has always, kept it very simple. He said that, look, if you want to invest in new technology or you want to set up a new service or a new department, only invest as much as you can afford to repay, into the bank or how much you have in your pocket. Never ever go beyond. And sometimes, in our generation or the next generation, we cringe. We look around and we're like, oh, these guys are raising hundreds and 200s of millions of dollars to build their businesses. But I think as you move forward, it's very important also to understand what the purpose of your business is. Why are you, why do you exist? It's not just to make money, right? So I've always believed in this philosophy that if you're able to figure out why you exist and why have you existed for 75 years, that's also another very big question. Then, if you're doing the right thing, money will follow at some point. It might not happen now. It might happen after 5 years, after 10 years, but you need to do what you're doing very religiously and with a lot of sincerity. So as we move forward, we had the studio, then we set up this business of creating sets. You see these old movies with the songs, there's one camera angle where the Jimmy Jib is moving left, right. And you can actually see the background, which is meant to be a mountain. You can actually see that it's a plaster of Paris kind of a, mountain made like this. So we got into that business, and that business also, there were not too many art directors at the time. The art directors had decided to collaborate with the studio owners because at that time there were very, very few studios. So the producers would only go to these 2 or 3 places, right, to shoot. So they're like, producers, when they come to the studio, we can automatically go and pitch our art direction services as well. It's like how an event company works right now. There's a mandap guy, there is a caterer, and there is an art decorator. How they work, same way the film industry used to work at that time. Anyway, moving on, then, we decided to enter film production. So my grandfather actually produced 3 or 4 movies. He was the founding member and president of the Indian Motion Picture Association. So he was a 2-time president of IMPA. And then he was also awarded with a Dada Saheb Phalke Academy Award for Famous's contribution to the film industry, and at that time. And then the 1970s, film really picked up. The old school cinema halls, many were being built. And we eventually decided that we want to open a film processing lab. So I'm sure you're familiar with what that is. We set that up. And then as we move forward, we entered the camera business. So rentals of camera. So there used to be a very renowned DOP by the name of Fali Mistry. So my grandfather actually tied up with him, and Faliji, well, I couldn't say he was employed by us, but he had partnered with us. And he used to provide his services as a DOP to all the filmmakers who used to come to Famous to shoot. So we had all these old cameras, Mitchell, Parvo, all of that. We still have a Parvo camera lying in my dad's office. I'll share a video of that later with you. And then we got into investing in Arri, and now we've got a Red, we have a Phantom. So cameras has been, you could say, it's been the heart of the business. We've never been in a position in the last 30 years at least where we've not owned a camera, either for rental or for in-house production. Then 1985, when my father entered the business, he was instrumental in securing a license for post-production services. So we were one of the first studios in the country to offer analog post-production at that time, telecine and all of those things. Yeah. 92, we set up one of India's first international grade sound studios. The reason I would say international grade is because the gentleman who designed our studio, he's a Brit, he's from London. His name is Andy Munro. So Andy Munro's company, Munro Acoustics, they were the guys who actually designed Abbey Road Studios, where the Beatles used to record. So, that was his first gig as an acoustic engineer in India, was Galactica A of Famous Studios in 1992. So we set up sound in 92. We obviously built that business. And then 1998, Famous House of Animation was born. So, we started with Clay and, those were the really formidable years where we had all the ad commercial producers in the same building. We had post production in the same building. All the shooting used to happen in the same building. So I would like to say that the late 90s, the early 2000s, Famous became the original co-working space. Everything happening under one roof. So to come back to your question of sustainability, we've always been very, very sincere with our clients. Dad has always had this money of paying somebody back before that person even gives the invoice. Advance mein paisa de do. That's always been his philosophy and my grandfather's philosophy. So that's the other reason why there is a very high level of trust and respect where Famous is concerned. Third, if any commitment is made, we never back out of it. So that's another very important thing. And, that's the reason many of our team members have also stayed back. Now, a simple example as early as the pandemic, I'm not going to name or try to, play my competition down because that's not what I'd like to do. But a lot of our competitors were unable to pay salaries. And I told my team members who came to me for an appraisal, I said, look, guys, we're in tough times. Our business is not doing well. I'd be happy if you guys can push this back by a few months. But don't make a situation where I agree to your appraisal, but I'm still paying you only 75% of that. So you're still getting your same salary. It's pointless, right? So why don't we stick to this exact thing right now? Let us pay you 100%. And when things improve, I will be the one who comes and tells you, okay, from next month, you are getting a raise. So I think the style of communication also is very important, right? What my grandfather and my father had. And I have a different style of communication, but it's always been very, very sincere. And it's always been a position where we give that responsibility to our team members to take it forward. And sometimes your team they need to feel trusted that, okay, your seniors trust you with the responsibility that they've given you, not micromanage. So I think a combination of these few things have allowed us to stay relevant. Also, the continuous commitment to invest in technology and offer your existing team members an opportunity to upgrade themselves and work with the next, a generation of tech and provide creative solutions to your clients. So it's been a combination of these 3 or 4 things. And we hope that it continues for the next 200 years also.
That'll be amazing. And I'm pretty sure it would, because there are many aspects of what you just said, Anand, that I would love to double click on. Starting with a line you used right at the beginning of your answer, right? You said it's all about what you define as the purpose of your existences. And I think yours is an industry which has changed rapidly. I mean, not necessarily rapidly, but changed a lot, since its inception. How would you define the purpose of Famous Studios today? And would it be any different from how your grandfather would have imagined it earlier?
So, the time when my grandfather was running the business, he could never have imagined that, for example, things would even go digital. So that was the first big change. Analog to digital was the first big change. But you see, that was more from the tech side of the business. Now, if you look at our business, you have a technology side, you have a talent side, and then you have a consumer side also. In the last 5 years, everything has changed in all these 3 verticals. From the consumer side, you now have video on demand, you have OTT that has flourished even more in the last 2 years. Okay. Even when you look at the theaters, you've got this 4K laser technology, you've got Dolby Atmos, you've got all these new things coming in that are elevating the experience for any film buff. And from the talent side, now, in order to deliver any kind of project, you need the best possible talent in every field. So whether it is an engineer on set, whether it is a colorist, a sound engineer, animator, visual effects artist, editor, you need to be on top of your game in terms of retaining top quality talent. But the other thing with what that's happened with talent is a lot of the good talent has decided to move independent freelance. So no post production studio in the world right now can stand up and say that okay, fine, this guy who edited Marvel Avengers, now he's permanently working with us or he's employed by us. That guy will never work. He'll have too many other things to work on. So it's very difficult to retain the top talent. So now the challenges are very different. So the thing is, the purpose for Famous in a way has always been the same, that we want to be the one-stop shop for anything to do with the media entertainment industry. But at the same time, we want to add value. We don't want to be just a store where there's a menu, you come and buy and you go. We also want to be part of that creative process. Okay. And we now have a vision to become a global leader and enabler of audio-visual creative solutions for the entire world. And at the same time, my next plan or my next objective is to also get into content in a very big way. So earlier this year in June, we released a film on Disney Hotstar, which was co-produced by Famous and Opticus. And I'm very happy to say that I've secured book rights. It's an autobiography. I've secured book rights, and now we're going to start developing the story. I can't disclose anymore, but that is my next project, which hopefully we should start shooting in the next 8 to 10 months.
Right, and that sounds really exciting. I can't wait for that. And another thing that you said earlier, which really intrigues me, is if I were to look at the history of this space, right? Like you rightly said, I think it was in the 80s when you first got in India's first telecine setup, post-production setup, or whether it was with cutting-edge cameras then and cutting-edge, production equipment today, cameras today. I think, if I'm not wrong, you also recently did the first motion capture in a TV commercial for the first time, right? Yeah. And of course, Galactica, which I want to talk to you about the name Galactica itself, what the inspiration for that is. For a studio which is very traditional, and you associate this with a lot of emotion, history, relationships, etc. You've been fairly cutting edge from a tech perspective. Where does that come from?
I think, that passion of always being on top of the game where technology is concerned, there's only one person to thank, and that's my father. So he used to take the initiative when he joined the business and things started picking up and, we started doing slightly well. He started traveling abroad for all these trade shows, and when he saw all this new tech, he said, why don't we have this in our country? And so he looks at it very differently. He's like, only if you invest and place that technology in your studio will your clients want to use it. Today, what we think, we're always thinking like, oh, we'll talk to the client, we'll ask them what they are interested in, then we'll go and invest. So he used to go, his strategy was completely different. His was back to front. Invest in the backend, in the tech, and then take it forward to the customer. So yes, that has its pros and cons. Not every technology that he invested in did well, but I would say 8 out of 10 things that he invested in did definitely do well. And that's when I look back, I'm like, wow, man, this guy really had it in him to invest constantly and constantly succeeding in the return side of it on that technology. So that's how it's been from the tech side always. So if you would enter the studio like in the late 90s or the 2000s, you'd always see a very old building, Art Deco. The lights are like from the olden days. And then you'll enter a room, you're like, oh my God, look at this tech, man. This looks like some out of from space. And the entire environment was still very 1950s, inside Famous, being in old construction. So as time moved forward, people were happy with it till say 2005, 2006. Then the next generation of directors and producers who are used to seeing all these fancy glass facade buildings, WeWork style of offices, then they started saying that, oh, look, there are other studios in different parts of the city which are offering better facilities. They've got pool tables, this, that. We want to go there. So we also decided that we'll move into that zone and we'll also upgrade our studios wherever possible. So our main Mahalakshmi studio in most parts has been completely resurrected. Okay. We have a dedicated virtual production studio now. So we have a green screen facility with a team that is only working with Unreal Engine to explore environments, that will go on the green screen or the LED wall. We have one studio with a phantom camera. So we do a lot of tabletop work for food and liquid, slow motion. We recently invested in a robotic arm where we will start testing it in the next month or so. We have our training coming up. We have the co-working space, which we launched in 2019. And a lot of the area which was unused, we've converted them into these multi-use venues, for events. Simply if somebody wants to take it up as an office space, we can even rent it out. So we've really spent a lot of money in this pandemic time to resurrect the look and feel of the original Famous Studios. And while we are doing that in our post-production facility, which is now in the suburban part of town, there we have a full-blown Dolby certified facility, Dolby Vision. We have a Dolby Atmos studio, one of the only two in Bombay that is certified, by the way. And in terms of other post services, visual effects, everything is 2021, all upgraded. So now it's moved to a phase where we're not working only with advertising agencies. We've actually delivered 7 or 8 web series and feature films in the last year or so. So our team, the other thing I was talking, going back to the fact that the team is taking more responsibility. Typically, when you have an artist that is working on a TV commercial, the workflow, the creative sensibilities are very different from a long format content, from web series or film. But over the course of 2 or 3 months, I realized that these guys are actually doing both things in the same day, and that's a very, very difficult thing to get your head around, especially for the talent. I mean, see, as a business owner, I will be like, what's the big deal? He's talent. He has to do both. That's not my concern if he can't do one and not the other. But if you really dig down and appreciate the level of creativity that goes into all this work, it's amazing how they can literally have a split personality for the same day to work on two different types of projects. So that's how it's been.
And I think these borders are blurring today, even at an ambition level, isn't it? A couple of decades back, for any creator, the real dream would have been to make a feature film, isn't it? Now it's probably a Netflix original. These borders are probably blurred for good, aren't they?
So the main reason why there is actually no border now is simply, you see, the content has reached corners of the country that you cannot even imagine. And I'm not saying through cinema, it's also through your handset, right? Cheap internet and video on demand is the biggest thing is VOD. Like today, you want to watch Sher Shah or you want to watch any other movie for that matter. You can download the thing and you can watch it in your travels. You don't need to be in front of a TV to watch it, or first day, first show type of situation. You can watch it when you want. So that has completely, there are no borders anymore, number one. Number two, the platforms are all global. So today, even a ZEE5, being an Indian platform, they have their apps available to download in many other Asian countries also. So today, you release a movie here, the same thing on Netflix can be released globally.
Yeah.
So there are no borders anymore. The demand for good content or the demand for content in general for Indian content is not only coming from India, mind you, it's coming from a lot of other countries as well. Just how, I'm aware there are a couple of shows that were produced in Turkey. Then there's Money Heist, which was a Spanish show. All these have done very well in India as well, right? So it's cross-border demand. There are no borders anymore.
Yeah.
Now the challenge is how do you produce content in, continuously in short spans of time? And how do you produce good content and how do you elevate the next generation of talent to adapt to this demand, right? So if I would get a sound engineer or a colorist who in the 1990s was the best name, he or she might not be able to adapt to this current situation of the amount of demand there is to churn out content left, right, and center. So yes, I would say that there are no borders anymore where content consumption is concerned, for sure. And there are plenty of opportunities. And what we have to realize is in India, we have so much history. Our culture is like hundreds of thousands of years old. There are plenty of stories. There's so many stories, inspiring stories that we can make content on. It's like an endless, it's an endless, infinite list of ideas.
Absolutely.
That can be created into audiovisual format.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love what you said about content from one nation becoming a global thing. Like, for example, the Turkish show called Ethos, is now so widely watched, and it's not even like a money heist kind of. It's a very serious sort of a piece, and even for that matter, Fauda, right, which was originally, I don't think when they created it, it was meant for global consumption, right? Just like money heist. So it's fascinating. The more I listen to you, right, the more I understand the leadership style that you're bringing in to an organization like this. You started the conversation talking about how you managed employee perceptions, and then you spoke about the way you're managing the workforce here and the tech evolution of the organization, etc. These are all attributes which normally someone will not associate with a business like cinema. These are all very, very corporate sort of a leadership models. Someone typically will not associate with cinema, and less so with a traditional studio sort of a setup, right? I want to talk about your own journey. And I know that, up until recently, you were spending a lot of time in the business of sports with Fanatics. Yeah. And I want to talk to you about, I actually want to ask you two things. One is, what did that experience sort of teach you? What did you learn from that?
Okay.
And second, your own journey with Famous, was it always going to be an inevitable comeback to home? Or is it unexpected for you?
Well, I wouldn't say it was inevitable or unexpected. Okay. I, somewhere in the back of my head, always knew I'd have to come back. But I didn't realize it would be so early. So I graduated in 2008. I entered the studio business in 2009. But very honestly, straight out of graduation, I think the biggest mistake I made was not really doing something on my own or working for somebody else for a course of 2 or 3 years.
Why do you say that? That it was a mistake?
Because I'll tell you why. I think I've always been a very protected child because I'm the only child. So, typical mothers, fathers love that, oh, no harm should reach my son type of situation. I'm being very honest. That's how it was. And maybe that wasn't what I needed, to wake up when it came to business or things like that. So 2009 to 2014, these were, I would say, very confusing years for me. Yes, I was instrumental and I did try my level best to change the way Famous was being perceived or the kind of clients that we had. Because, 2009 to 14, the business was going into a slump, the studio business. And there were many reasons for that. One reason was that there was constant, speculation and people approaching my father for discussion on redeveloping our property. So I don't know if you're aware, but Famous is located in pretty much the heart of Bombay. And if anyone was to construct a building there, you have a clear view of the racecourse and the sea. So it was, you would say, a very, very good location. So we did engage with 2 or 3 developers at the time. But when I look back, I'm very happy to say that fortunately nothing went through. Okay. And the market was pretty bad for real estate at the time, particularly because we were coming out of that whole 2008 economic slump, that happened in the US. So that time was really weird because my dad was constantly in meetings with these guys, drafting agreements and this and that. And on one hand, we were also in a position where we were trying to move our post-production studio from the southern part of town into the suburban part of town. So I oversaw all of that. We set up a studio in Calcutta as well because we had one very big client there who said that, it's very difficult for us to keep flying down to Bombay to review your VFX work. So why don't you open a satellite office in Calcutta? So we did all of that. Now, one of those trips to Calcutta, 2014 Feb or Jan it was, I went to my sister's place. So I have extended family in Cal, a lot of family in fact. I went to my sister's place and my one cousin was sitting there who I haven't seen in like 8 years. So I went to him and he's watching this really quick edited video, of sport, ICC, this, that, whatever. And at the end, it says official tour agent ICC T20 World Cup Bangladesh, which happened in 2014-15, if I'm not mistaken. So I was like, Bhaiya, what is this? He's like, oh, Anant, I've set up this business because I'm bored of my family business. I'm doing this. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I said, send me some details on it. So I got researching. I did some, I had kind of understood what was going on. And I just, out of the blue, said to him that I want to partner with you without consulting anyone from my family. I was like, I want to partner with you. Now, what was happening with the media business? One thing was all of this happening at the back, but I wasn't able to really find my position in the industry. I wasn't really passionate about the industry at that time. I thought that, what is this? And at that time, it was just the cinema. So we were anyway not doing any feature film work at the time. It was primarily TV commercials. Our team's thoughts were fairly outdated. And I wasn't able to impose myself in any shape or form to make them change their mind, change their thought process. So it was just, I would actually say that I I could have done a lot more in those 5 years, but I didn't for whatever reason. It didn't work out. Then when the Fanatic opportunity popped up, I think those 4 years have been one of the best 4 years of my life, like without question. And when I say best 4 years, not only in terms of the travel, the experiences, meeting all these sporting personalities, watching India, Pakistan, or watching the UEFA Euro final, or whatever you name it, going to the Olympics in Brazil, these were all eye opening, amazing, amazing experiences. From the standpoint of experiencing it as a fan, even though I'm running a company called Fanatic, but I'm still going to the stadium as a fan, right? You still want India to win.
Right.
You still want your favorite football team to win, whatever. But there were a lot of learnings as well. I remember times I got verbally bashed by my clients, massive arguments with my own brother within the company. So me and my brother have rather very different personalities. But the amount he taught me, okay, yes, wherever I made a mistake, I owe up to it. I'm like, I'm sorry I made this mistake. But I came out, you could say, like, you said, like a rough diamond to a polished diamond situation. I did come out pretty polished after that. So a lot of things that I did not have within me, I was able to polish those skills. The biggest thing was that the two biggest learnings were, working closely with a team to execute, say, one tournament. I remember the Olympics, we had taken about 1,400 people from India to Brazil. Okay, now Brazil is not an easy country to manage logistics. Nobody speaks English, but we pulled through and we did it. Okay, so teamwork, and the second biggest thing that I came out with was passion and a slightly higher capacity to take risks. So then what I did was and why I came out of the business, 2017 Champions Trophy, India lost to Pakistan at the Oval. So we were there for the match, and I come back. And, we were doing a debrief on the tournament, and clients are happy, not happy, whatever. And then I come back home, and my father's like, beta, look, I'm almost 73. If you are not interested in taking over Famous, then I'll stop investing in the business. So I don't know if he said it to me as a threat, or he was just saying it in a very normal way, but it had an impact. So I said that, Dad, you need to give me a couple of months. I need to think about this, because I definitely did see a future in the tourism business, undoubtedly. Anyway, so I sat with him and I had a few conversations, and I wanted to understand what his thoughts were and how he would like to take this business forward. What part of the business does he want to give me responsibility for? So he said, I want to give you utter and complete responsibility for everything. Okay. And you don't worry, I'm there to back you. So during my sports business, whenever I used to come back, Dad used to always tell me, Arey, you are to running a travel agency. What are you talking to me? He used to always shoot me down, like a typical father. What you're going to watch is India-Pakistan match. It's all fixed. Why are you going to watch all this? So I'm like, Dad, look, it's a new business. I'm trying to learn. It's not just about going and watching sport. It's about 100. But at that age, they don't really understand. So you let it go. But there was this really nice father-son moment at that time when he said that, look, I'm there. Don't worry. I'm going to back you. Okay. When he said that to me, it was a very different tonality from what I was hearing in the past 4 years. So I decided then, okay, let me do my research. Then I started doing some research on the industry, and I realized that I had missed out a lot in the last 4 years. The whole industry had changed. OTT, video on demand, was really picking up. I spoke to a couple of my team members who have been at Famous for 20 plus years, who I actually consider my elder brothers, and I go to them for advice. So they also said that, look, Anant, what you are doing right now might seem very exciting, but this media industry, if we are able to set a good base moving forward, and with the kind of infrastructure that we already have, that definitely has more of a career opportunity for all of us. And if you come in, it will give us a new lease of life, because chalo, it's like the next generation is coming in. We might be able to explore a lot more. So that kind of convinced me, and I decided to exit that business, and I came back to Famous. There was a bit of a hangover from the old business because, I'm sitting in the office and I'm used to just being on a plane 24/7. So it took some time, but 2018 end, I really started finding my feet back in the business. So I started taking decisions. Okay. Started investing in the new tech. And the biggest thing that happened, no, I don't want to say this on live, whatever, but it became a question of leading by example. So, we secured some massive clients because I pushed my team to help me secure those clients. So I was like, look, I have an opportunity with Disney. I need some technical advice. And actually went out there and secured the business. So my team members were like, yeah, this guy's just entered the business 6 months back. And, he's been able to secure big contracts from clients that we've not been able to touch in the last 5 or 6 years. So that mutual respect between the team members and me, it started growing. Then I got everyone's backing for all the new stuff that we started doing. So whether it was the Dolby introductions, whether it was this co-working space, building our visual effects team, giving my team members that surge of confidence that, look, you guys can go and do anything, but you guys need to come to me with a plan. What is it that you see this is where this industry is heading? I will back you. Don't worry. So that has always been my tonality with my team. That guys, you need to have a dream for yourself. If you have a dream for yourself, or the company will succeed along with that, and I will back you to achieve your dreams. That's always been my tonality with my team members. So that's been the journey for me. So I would say the first phase was pretty much all over the place. The second phase was very exciting, but a lot of tough learnings.
Right.
And now I feel that I feel like I have some sort of a foothold. And, the dream and the vision is to obviously build this company, scale it to new heights.
Right. Before we go into the future of Famous, this is what I want to end with. There's one part which I feel I've not spoken to you about enough, which is the entire journey of restoration. Right?
Okay.
Especially for an organization like yours, which is part living in nostalgia and history, and part living in the future. This becomes a very interesting thing, right? And I think India, I don't know what your point of view is, but for us outside the business, we feel India usually does a very terrible job of archiving or restoring some of our greatest films.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Sholay was the biggest of the product to come out of that, the restored version, which I think was in the early 2000s or something like that. What is your take on that? And is it something that we'll be spending a lot of time on as an organization in the future as well?
So look, restoration is something that we, as a department, we shut it down many years back. In fact, after we delivered Sholay, we decided to pull out of it simply because the cost of managing a team, 50, 60 artists, it's a very large overhead. And you require a constant amount of work coming in to really sustain that business. And if I look at it as a business, restoration is not a business that I would get into, because that same money that I'm spending on a team of artists, I could use that money creating content where my returns could be 10x. So that's simply a business side of things. When you look at the legacy side of content, I think that restoration is something that must happen for all our content, because all our content right now is lying in Pune or in Bombay at NFDC or in NFA in Pune. And let's be honest, it's not in the best condition. So in spite of urging the government, to be a lot more proactive. And, I remember when I had gone and met some of the officers there, I said that, look, what are you worrying about? You give us the work. If you're guaranteeing me work, I will invest in the technology. I'm not asking you to invest in it, right? And we'll try and quickly churn things out. But at that time, things were slow. I do not know what the situation is right now, so I'm not going to comment on that. But again, we can then argue, okay, you'll restore this content. Who's going to see it? There's plenty of platforms available where you can just quickly put it up on YouTube. YouTube, people will see it. Why think about Netflix, Amazon? There are hundreds of different platforms by which you can showcase the content. But then you see that intent and effort to restore needs to be there. And the custodian of that content has to realize the value of that content. Let's be honest. So today I might look at, say, an archive of the 1971 war or, whatever, as very, very important moments in our history. But the person who owns that content might not think so and might not want to restore it. So I think the government and the private sector definitely need to get together and, create a mandate that, look, this is what we need to do, and roll it out, and then, give every studio in the country the opportunity, because that's the amount of content there is. It's not just enough for one studio. At least 25, 30 studios can get together, and, put their resources together and then restore all of this. There is a huge opportunity, but movement in that direction is still not happening.
That'll be lovely, isn't it, to see it like that. Anand, moving on to the future, right? you've already been, and again, to think of, I was going to ask you about the co-working space, that you are you're developing today. And then, speaking to you, I realized that this is not new for Famous. You've been doing this in the past as well.
Yes.
But I think what is new is the environment you're operating in. Right? I mean, I'm in the business of advertising. I know, the amount of work that you're already doing with brands and clients and agencies.
Sure.
But we're going through a phase where we are in the middle of a very vibrant creative economy. Right? I would love to hear, what you think of it, and what will the role of Famous be in an environment like that? And then what are you building, for the next few years to flourish in that?
So the idea is, again, it's a combination of talent, technology, infrastructure, and these are three things, right? That's what the creative industry works on. So our focus on the talent side of things is a two-pronged approach. One is talent that assists our clients, offering them the best creative solutions for their TV commercial or their feature film or whatever it is, the broadcast TV show, anything that is to do with content. The second part of talent is going to be the quality of the writers, the producers, and the directors. So that focus is primarily going to be for my or our company's aspirations to create more IP and produce content with the Famous banner. Because end of the day, yes, I think for the next 15, 20 years, we might be able to sustain as a solutions provider. Okay. But the way technology is becoming cheaper, and it's easier for an artist to use that tech sitting at home also now, right? That studio environment might not be required for all services moving forward. Yes, maybe for sound, for color grading, and maybe a few things here and there will be required. But for other post-production services now, for example, many American studios also, they've been working from home for the last year and a half, but they've delivered big projects, people working from home. Yes, their infrastructure at home also is very good. Power lines, electricity. It's not as, in India, many places you still don't have electricity. So it'll take some time here. But eventually, I have to look at the future of my company. And the future of my company rests in the fact that it starts producing its own content and starts having its own IP, where it's got some value attached to it. So then coming to technology. Now, if you see technology, I mentioned about the green screen studio. I spoke about this new robotic arm that we have. Now, robotic arm is actually used where? It's used in manufacturing. It's used in assembly lines and things like that. But that robotic arm will be installed with a certain software where we mount a camera to its head and it moves really fast. So, it gives a different creative input to the client. And obviously, as I mentioned, this all-inclusive Dolby facility, which is very important for the future of OTT. If you see most of the Netflix, Amazon, and Hotstar shows, the deliverables for those shows are all Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. So if you have that in your studio, you are always at an advantage. So things are evolving around that. Then in terms of infrastructure, as I mentioned, we've already spent a ton of money to resurrect our building, our space. So if any content creator chooses to come, they not only have multiple places where they can shoot, we also have ready-made sets. Okay, so we have these walk-in closets, we've got beauty terminals, interview room, conference room setup, office room setup. So we have ready-made sets as well. So someone who's coming in on a shoestring budget, they don't need to spend on art. They can use that facility, they can shoot, and they can move on. Right. So today, what we have done in the last year and a half is first understand what the current creative economy looks like. Okay. The current creative economy is very, very large. Okay. You've got the influencers that are shooting, I'm sorry to say, absolute rubbish. So you have the big dharmas of the world and, Fox stars of the world that are making very, very good content, very good films as well. So as a service provider or as a person that has the studio infrastructure as well as the tech infrastructure, how do you offer this to to the next generation? So we thought the initial methodology would be the co-working space. And 2019 June, when we opened Famous Working Company, we were absolutely full till the pandemic hit. So we had a capacity of say 140, we had 160 people. Okay. But obviously after the pandemic, people are not coming to work, let alone stepping out. So we're waiting for this to finish. And, we have that same objective and we'll again start pushing it out in the market that, look, guys, this is what we have. And for us, it's not like, oh, come and use this space, we'll give you a discount. Our communication has always been that, guys, come in, you have certain dreams, you want to create content, we want to collaborate with you and assist you in that process. So come and collaborate with us and let's create together. That's basically the message we're sending out, you know. And now, not only we want to work with our local clients in Bombay or creators in Bombay, there are creators everywhere in India right now.
Yes.
So the next phase is going to be reaching out to the creative community across the country and filling in and saying that, okay, guys, you know, why don't you come in? I'll give you an example. 2019 December, we co-hosted an art show, you know. So the studio was opened up for a 7-day event for an art exhibition. Now, when people in Bombay who knew of famous studios, they walked into the space, they're like, you know, this place is huge. What a cool place to have an art exhibition. Because, you know, you're giving a raw space. It's a studio. And then you've got these art figures hanging from the 40-foot ceiling. It's just a different experience, you know. So we're looking at the creative community at large. It's not just the audiovisual community. We're also looking at live events. We're also looking at, you know, art and things like that. You know, concerts. We've had a couple of gigs that were hosted by Sunburn. They used our facility. So, you know, it's a very vast, the media entertainment sector, if you look at it, it's very, very big. It's not just filmmaking, it's 20 other things. So that's the idea.
You know, I want to end the episode on a slightly personal note. You must have grown up amidst a lot of stories, given the kind of cinematic history that has been made over the decades at famous studios, isn't it? What are some of your fonder memories of walking in and out of those doors to meet your father, your grandfather, and so many legends of cinema who probably were loitering around somewhere within those walls, isn't it?
Yeah, so my father used to tell me, you know, Raj Kumar, right, the actor, who used to say Johnny, you know. So when he used to come to Famous, he used to always have a cigarette in his mouth. And I remember I mentioned you taking back to what I said about the air-conditioned studio. So dad said that he had this habit. Unka call hota tha say 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So he used to come in at 12:30 in the afternoon, sit in the air-conditioned studio. You know that the director's chair, the typical director's chair, which sitting down, looks back, puts a cigarette in his mouth, and he says, "आज अच्छी ठंड लग रही है, आज काम करने का मूड नहीं है, जानी, आज का कैंसिल करो." So, you know, things like that. So dad had a couple of really funny ones that he shared with me. Unfortunately, by the time I really started feeling passionate about the business, my grandfather passed away in 2014. So I didn't really get much from him, but he did mention to me about Dilip Kumarji, who he has worked with. And he's worked with many, many other actors, you know, Amitabh Bachchan, all the legends have been to Famous.
His first film, Sanam, had Devanand in it.
Yes. Had Devanandji also in it. So, you know, he had a very, very good relation with the older generation of talent. And yeah, personally, I remember, I think it was 98 or 97. I was at Famous. I must have been all of 10 years old, 11 years old. And I was walking up and down the alley. And Akshay Khanna, Amir Khan, and Saif Ali Khan, they're walking up and down and, you know, smiling and laughing. And they're wearing these leather pants and tight red shirts and all. And then I went into the studio and I realized that Dil Chahta Hai ka shooting was happening there. So the song Koi Kahe was shot at Famous. The whole nightclub scene. So I remember, you know, chatting with them and they were like, "Oh, we're making this movie, chalo, walk in with us." So they actually took me inside the studio. He's like, "Look, मैं वहाँ नाचूंगा, मैं उधर नाचूंगा, मैं उधर गाना गाऊंगा." So the experiences, meeting some of the celebrities also when I was younger, those memories always going to be there. But very honestly, when I used to come to Famous, my primary objective of coming to Famous was to spend time with my grandfather. So I used to go straight to his cabin, sit with him. He used to order this hot mocha from our cafe for me and a cheese toast. And he used to just sit with me and he used to tell me stories about our old home in Rajasthan. And he used to say that, you know, tumhare dadaji aise the. So your great grandfather was this. Then I had these problems in life. I overcame this. So he was always giving me life lessons, you know. So my primary objective of coming to Famous was never to meet any celebrity. It was always to spend time with my grandfather because I really had that special bond with him, you know. So yeah, these are some of the memories that I have when he was around and one of the anecdotes that my father shared with me. So yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Anand, we usually end the episode by asking the guest what he or she is watching, reading, or listening to. You must be a huge connoisseur of content. Tell us what's inspired you in the recent past from what you've seen or read or listened to.
Okay. So in terms of books, I actually read quite a few, but the one that I would recommend everyone to read is actually the Bob Iger story. So Robert Iger, who was the ex-CEO of Disney, I really look up to him. And very honestly, after reading his book, he's more of a mentor figure to me. I also did, there's a website called Masterclass.
Yeah.
That does these things. So there is a masterclass on with Bob Iger on leadership. So I've also seen that. So anyone who is interested from the business side of things, very, very interesting book to read.
I
definitely.
loved that book. I loved more than anything else. In a way, just like this interview was, right? This chat was. It was extremely candid. I didn't expect that. Candid. I expected a lot of leadership lessons of what works, etc. But I love the way he talked about things that didn't work, his failures. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. So I think that the reason I enjoyed it was because his book is like a story, right? It's all storytelling thing. He's not giving any kind of gyan, or he's not trying to say that, oh, you have to do this or do that. He learned from his experiences, from being that producer at ABC to becoming at the summit of Disney. And it was all hard work, So very interesting book. Really like that. There's also a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, which is also a good book. Other than that, actually, I've not really had a time to read anything else because work has been busy, and for the next film, I've been traveling as well, so been a bit busy with that. When it comes to content, I did see Sher Shah. I thought it was very well made, but it could have. I would give it like maybe 7 on 10. But again, take it with a pinch of salt from me because I really, really look very deeply into how film is made. And not the average Bollywood viewer who would just watch, any movie. And in terms of web series, I did watch Hit and Run, which was made again by the producers of Fauda. The same actor who was in Fauda. So decent show, quite like that as well. And actually right now, I'm watching a show on Netflix called Regiment Diaries, which is on the Indian Army. Must-watch show. It's very documentary-ish, but each episode focuses on one regiment of the Indian Army. So whether it is the paratroopers or it's the Maratha infantry or the Jammu Kashmir Rifles, which Vikram Batra was part of, or Rajputana Rifles. So it just gives you a very brief history on what the Indian Army's history is and what they've done and what valiant soldiers they've had over the years that have protected our borders and protected us. So I've been watching it because I do have a very, very strong passion for our armed forces in general. So anytime there's any content on the armed forces, I watch it. So I've been watching that. But otherwise, work's been keeping me busy. So yeah.
You finished the new Money Heist season?
No, I'm actually I'm not a big fan of Money Heist at all. I think it's like one of those Bollywood movies. So I honestly do not like it at all. Many of my family members like it, but I kind of stay away from it. I don't like it at all.
Good for you. Anand,
yeah.
And what about podcasts? Do you listen to podcasts much?
No, not really, actually. So, but this has been so interesting. I actually did read up on who else you had interviewed in the past, and I do have a plan of downloading it. And I'm actually traveling over the weekend, so I'll download it on my iPad and I will hear it as I.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let us know how this can be.
Definitely.
But Anand, thank you so much for being so candid in this chat. I really enjoyed it. And wishing you all success with what's to come.
Thank you so much, Karthik. It was a great chat and inviting all of you to Famous whenever you're on Bombay.
Yes.
Yeah? All right. Best of luck, guys.
Thanks, Anand. Thank you so much.
Bye.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And filter_coffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys. Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Longest Constitution, Priya narrates the long and ongoing battle of striking down Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. That allows one party to appeal to the courts to restore his or her conjugal acts, and has unsurprisingly been used more by men than women. On Press Decode, Vagda, Ragini, Sarah, and Adya talk about the inspiration behind the movie Hotel Rwanda. Venkatesh Saha, head of APAC and Middle East expansion at WISE, joins Anupam on Pesavesa to talk about foreign exchange services. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina explains the difference between personality and personal brand. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really does help us. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quota, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Inter vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.